Welcome, everyone. This election season, the North Pacific's Ministry of Radio is sponsoring a series of voice chat and text-based town halls for each candidate. We hope this event is informative, and we encourage you to participate by posting questions in the chat. Now let's get started. Welcome to the show, Artemis.
For having me.
I'd like to dive straight into things. I know this is going to be a little bit difficult to balance between getting your campaign details in and trying to avoid overlap from the SC Week series, but we'll try our best. To give us a little bit of background, could you, first and foremost, give us a brief history of your time in the North Pacific, including each of the positions you've formerly held in our government?
Sure thing. Yeah, I have been involved in TNP for several years now. Off and on for the first little bit of my involvement. I've served in two cabinet ministries, Minister of Communications and Minister of Culture. Both terms were actually cut rather short, one due to being elected as vice delegate in a special election, and the other one due to real life reasons. I've served as member of the Election Commission, a temporary hearing officer. I'm also serving as a member of the Security Council. I've served in deputy ministerships as well as speaker, deputy speaker, and other executive staff roles. I would say I have had a wide career and involvement within TNP and looking forward to continuing that involvement.
Can you explain why you decided to run for re-election for the vice delegacy?
I decided to run again, primarily because I always feel like there's more work to be done, and it is a position that I have found to enjoy quite immensely. There's a lot of intricacies to this position, and it's really piqued my interest, especially after serving 2 terms as a speaker and as a member of the Security Council, getting to play the role of the vice delegate and being involved in that position.
What do you feel were your major achievements in prior terms as vice delegate, and how will you continue to make progress?
A major, I would say, a big achievement in previous terms was getting TNP to number 1 in total endorsements given without even having any major events happening. I thought this was a very good achievement to say this is what we can do, and we don't even need to have events to do it. We just have to have consistent and sound members being involved in endotarding, advertising, telegrams, dispatches, all the above, and just getting people involved and not having to rely solely on rewards and events to make that happen. That is something I want to try to emulate this coming term. I took a look at the census the other day and believe we're currently sitting at 4th in terms of endorsements. Overall, we remain very high, number 1 in the NS world for endorsements, number of endorsements, WA nations, and we just need to get people more involved with endotarding, exchanging endorsements, endorsing the delegate, vice delegate, and members of the Security Council, as well as other nations, increasing our keeper numbers and keeping that trend going.
I think one of the things that you do well pretty consistently when it comes to your campaigns is keeping them simple and trying not to overpromise in certain things. You've already mentioned that we were in the past able to attain the number 1 region in World Assembly endorsements without an event, but I was wondering if you do have any plans for any significant Security Council related events during the next term, if elected.
If elected, I'm looking and plan on having a discussion with the eventual delegate and Minister of Culture and Home Affairs on hosting a TNP's number 1 event, similar to one we had previous years, to help us build up our endorsement and gain that number 1 position back. I think it's very attainable, very doable. It's going to take some planning because we do have significant hurdles to overcome. Initially, we were number 2 and we were trying to attain the number 1. We're now number 4, and we're going to be shooting for number 1. So that's a significant jump that we'll be aiming for.
Why do you think being number 1 region in average World Assembly endorsements is important if it's something that's merely symbolic?
I think it's important because it shows the power of our World Assembly Development Program. It is a program that many other regions are starting to emulate and build their own upon. And so to show how successful this can be by using the WADP program, we can use that to show we are number one. Giving out these endorsements, increasing our ratings, and all the end of it, it all makes us more secure by exchanging those endorsements.
What do you think of the current performance of the Security Council? What areas, if any, do you think should be improved or emphasized upon?
I think the Security Council is doing a very good job especially these past two terms. We're seeing activity from members increase. We're seeing more involvement on the game side aspect of the community, but there's always room for improvement. And I would like to see us to continue to make more improvement, more posts, more interactions with our game side communities, as well as reaching out to other parts of our communities. I think there's definitely some parts of the communities that don't see a security council present, and I would like to see that change. More involvement in the overall grand scheme of things. I think that is a paramount key to the role of the Security Council. Some other things that I like that we are doing, we're working on the disclosure aspect, being more open with certain topics while still retaining some of our confidentiality in sensitive areas. This is an area that has been a hot topic for a while now, and we're working to make sure that we reach the balance of what the public wants and the operational needs of the Security Council.
What do you consider to be a good measure of a security counselor's activity? Are there any quantitative measures? I know you already mentioned that you want people to post more often, but should there be like a metric that we can look to make sure that security counselors are accountable to? Is the endorsements given statistic good enough? And what other things matter to you?
I don't think there's one singular metric to use to measure Security Council activity. I think it's a combination of several different areas: involvement, making posts, being active on the forum, as well as the metrics that I put out on a weekly basis, or the Vice Delegate has been putting out on a weekly basis for over a year now. Endorsements given is a big aspect, but also endorsements received, because you can give out all the endorsements you want, but you're only going to get a fraction of them back. So by actively engaging with those who you're endorsing, you're more likely to get endorsements back. So I think those two are very key aspects of metrics when evaluating. But a big part of that is the WADP also helps promote the Security Council without the Security Counselor actually having to do much. So it's evaluating these different aspects, key metrics, and kind of saying, okay, this person's being very active. Yeah, their endorsements received is not as high as we'd like, but we see them actively endotarding. We see them posting in all aspects of the community. So to me, that's an active security counselor. Someone who just relies on the World Assembly Development Program for their endorsements, to me, that is not a active security counselor.
If it were up to you, do you think it would be better for counselors to be more well-rounded in their involvements across our communities, or is it preferable for security counselors to have a specialty in certain different aspects of our game?
To me, it all depends on the individual. Their involvement plays a key part, but also how they interact with the community is another key aspect that I think we need to evaluate when considering someone to be a security council member, as well as active security counselors. Are they being involved with the community, or are they just using the security council as an armchair post for the community? I think being involved in different aspects, whether it's being involved in the executive council, executive staff, election commission, being a World Assembly resolution writer, role play communities, and active on the R&B and game side communities. I think those all contribute to how well a security counselor is going to be. Now, you don't have to be involved in every single little aspect, but I think it's important that you've developed yourself within the community.
So we discussed a little earlier the Security Council event that we recently held. Um, it was definitely a happy accident that it happened to coincide with one of the largest influxes of new players coming to the game.
Indeed.
And so that
Indeed.
definitely led to massive gains in endorsement counts that we saw across the Security Council. But I'm wondering, had it occurred at a different time, how effectual do you think it would have been? To what extent can we attribute the boost in endorsement counts to the SC event rather than just a lot of new players joining?
I honestly think that having the event at the time we did, with the massive influx, it gave the new players an opportunity to get involved. So I think it worked out very well, um, by being an event for these new players to say, hey, this is an aspect of the community. What's this about? What's their history? Okay, now how can I get involved? I think that worked out very well for us. And yeah, it was a happy accident, but you have to take those when you can. Um, so, had it occurred at another event, I think it still would have been very successful, giving the public an opportunity to ask all members of the Security Council questions in a very open manner. Um, Asking them questions about their history, their thoughts on things. All of this gives you more reason to want to endorse the Security Council member. And so I think it still would have been very successful, relative to the terms and numbers that we already had, previously before the influx. So I think overall it still would have been successful, just not to the extent that it was.
Thank you. So at this point in the interview, I'm going to switch over to asking primarily audience submitted questions. So if you're in the
Okay.
audience and you have a question for Artemis, please post it in the Agora text and make sure to ping me. The first question here comes from Moreover. What region that the North Pacific does not currently have diplomatic relations with do you think would be most beneficial should a partnership be established? And would you be interested in establishing diplomatic relations with them? I suppose this is more of a delegate type question, but you're welcome to answer it.
It is more of a delegate type question, but I'm happy to answer it. I think there's several communities out there, several regions that we would do good to have more relations with, more foreign relations with them. Um, I think the big one that I think we could benefit greatly from is probably forest. I think that would be a good region for us to develop relations with and, um, grow more culturally and diplomatically, build closer. Yeah.
Iluvatar asks, how would you handle accusations of conspiracy to coup by the delegate that are brought to you by someone from a hostile region?
Handling accusations of that nature would obviously be very delicate. In that situation, it would be I would do, some more investigation myself to try to corroborate, these accusations, find some evidence, verify any evidence submitted by, um, the individual who's accusing the delegate of conspiracy, and kind of at that point, I would bring in members of the Security Council and brief them on what I've discovered, and go from there and develop a plan of action to address these concerns. Um, Obviously, if the threat is very imminent and very real, then we'll go about it in the way that it needs to be handled.
Majak asks, do you think the Security Council should submit reasons for recommending or not recommending an applicant to the Security Council in a more formal fashion?
I guess Magic. I guess what you're asking is if we should submit a, summary of our basically a statement of why we're recommending this applicant or not recommending this applicant. Is that correct? Okay, and Majak said yes. So I think it would be, um, beneficial in the event that an applicant goes to a vote. Um, it would we could summarize our reasoning, our rationale, um, for a consensus of the Security Council of why we why we're recommending this, Security Council applicant or not. Um, as to making it a formal fashion, I'm open to that idea, and I think it would be beneficial for people to understand. Okay, here's the general reasoning for the Security Council recommending or not recommending this applicant.
Should foreign voices, such as gameplay, be considered when evaluating the security risk of a nation applying for citizenship?
To an extent. I am not one to ignore um, input from other people, especially other communities. If they have something about this nation that would present a security risk to the region, um, then I firmly believe that it needs to be taken into consideration and brought up to the Security Council, because the Security Council is there to help advise the vice delegate in terms of citizenship applications. Ultimately, the decision obviously rests with the vice delegate, but it's always good to hear a few more voices and a few different viewpoints on those individuals.
Can you discuss a little bit more in detail about what constitutes a risk to either democracy in the North Pacific or to our community as that applies to the evaluation of citizenship applications?
So, what constitutes a risk? I would say anything, a past history of individuals um, who have previously been implicated in conspiracy, in coups, destroying regions. Um, I think that presents a risk to the North, to democracy as a whole, and it needs to be taken into consideration. Obviously, if this event that happened 10 years ago, okay, that's a little less pressing. Um, but if it's something that happened within the past couple years, I think that needs to be taken more seriously. And how do I apply this to evaluation? Obviously, this is going to come from discussion with members of the Security Council, discussion with other um, stakeholders in the region to kind of get a consensus on this. Because ultimately, in the event that I didn't deny this applicant, they are going to have to go before the regional assembly to be voted upon, whether they uphold my denial or they overrule my denial.
Do you think that the Security Council made the right decision in failing Carmack's security check? And if you think that that decision wasn't correct, where do you think we went wrong, or how would you have handled it?
I don't think we made a mistake on Cormac's application. Um, I think it was the right decision. There's two sides to Cormac. There's the side who has done some good in other regions, but there's also the side of he has a past of cooing regions. He has had a past of um, causing disruption within regions. So I think it was a good decision on Sil Dorset's part to fail him, and for the regional assembly to uphold that denial.
And going forward, if elected delegate, would you or could you give us your thoughts on a potential application for citizenship by either Funkadelic or United Massachusetts?
Um, Funkadelic would be failed on my aspect due to his part in the attempted coup of the East Pacific. Um, and I think he's fully aware that he would not really be welcome back for citizenship in the region. Regarding I think overall I probably would fail him, and after some further consideration, um, due to his part in the CC Confederation of Corrupt Dictators attempt to infiltrate and coup the region.
Aluvatar has the next question. Suppose the Security Council is discussing a very active endorsement gatherer who has more endorsements than half the people in the Security Council. Suppose a member goes ahead and sends a telegram to this nation, threatening that nation with ejection unless it slows down. What would inform your decision as to whether to recommend removing that member of the Security Council?
Well, the first part of that is members of the Security Council can warn nations for um, being over the legal limit of endorsements. So, probably did he go a little far with threatening with ejection? I would probably say yes. It probably could be worded a little bit more friendly and just, hey, you're getting really close to our endorsement ceiling. Um, please slow it down. And then At that point, they get another warning. If they get another warning and they still fail to abide it, that's when they can leave be be removed from the region for an update.
What would you consider as your standard for when a security counselor should be removed from office?
I would say that the gross, obviously, being removed from the Security Council, inactivity. I think that's one thing that we, as a region, cannot stand for. Stand for, and are the institution that's supposed to protect the security of the region. Is we cannot have inactive members. Um, Obviously, inactivity depends on a variety of factors, and those need to be taken into consideration because there are some times where members of the Security Council do have to take personal leave for personal reasons. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration. Remove other aspects of removal from the council, not show obviously gross negligence, breaking the laws. There's a variety of reasons that we could remove a security counselor.
From a citizen's perspective, did you find the weekly Security Council endorsement statistics to be useful? And is there anything you'd like to change about that going forward, like tracking additional things or removing some statistics? And I believe you mentioned in your campaign that you would continue publishing this weekly report, but I just wanted to verify that that's correct.
Yes, so I will be continuing publishing the weekly report. I think it's very beneficial for the public to see where their Security Council stands in terms of endorsements received, given, and influence levels, as well as when's the last time they logged in with their nation. Some changes that I made to the weekly update was including the average Security Council rating, which gives you a good idea of this is how the Security Council as a whole stands in terms of endorsements. So I think that was a very good addition. Probably some additional changes that I'm looking at making are some more tracking on our keeper numbers from the start of the term to the end of the term. And some more, yes, just some more tracking in terms of the keepers as well. Yeah.
Do you believe there should be a set minimum or maximum for the number of security counselors that we have at any given time?
I don't believe there needs to be a maximum. If we have nations who have the meet the fit to join the council, I think they should be able to join the council. And we shouldn't just evaluate it based on, oh, we have 10 members, we can't take any more people. I don't think that's the right approach to take. As well as lower limits for the Security Council, I obviously think you're going to need several members. I wouldn't say we need to put a hard stop. Oh, we absolutely have to have 5 members, so we need to lower our requirements. No, I would say it needs to be enough where we can still protect the region in the terms of a delegate emergency.
As you well know, in the coming election, given in part to the massive influx of nations that we recently experienced, all of the delegacy candidates are well below the endorsement level that many security counselors and the current delegate hold. What steps are you going to have to take as vice delegate in order to ensure that that transition period happens as quickly as possible?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's something that we had to deal with when Macedonia was elected. I believe they were in the low 500s when they were elected, and I think they had to get 800, 900 to 900 endorsements to take over as delegate. Um, so it's definitely going to be a transition period, and it's going to involve members of the Security Council actively sending out endorsements on behalf of the new delegate, and it's going to take work on the aspect of the delegate being involved with endorsing, um, being active on the game side aspect of things.
What advice would you give to whoever ends up winning the delegacy election on how to perform well during that transition period? And what amount of communication with the Security Council do you believe they should have?
A good tip, it's going to have to be daily endorsing, checking in multiple times a day, posting on the RMB. It's gonna take a lot of consistent work for any of the delegates candidates to reach the P1 position. So that's just going to be my advice: consistency, activity, and doing it every day until you're in the delegacy. What was the second? Yeah, second part of your question was what? I forgot already.
I was asking, the second part of my question was, to what extent or how much do you believe that delegate should communicate with the Security Council in order to speed that transition?
Traditionally, the delegate enjoys access to the Security Council on invitation from the vice delegate, and I don't see that changing this coming term if elected. They'll be invited into the Security Council chambers. We'll have multiple rounds of discussion with them because we do have several former delegates sitting on the Security Council. And so their advice is also going to be paramount and very important to the new delegate in terms of taking the delegacy.
One thing I'm sure you are aware of is, as with any organization, especially one that is so firmly rooted in tradition as the Security Council, change can be cumbersome and slow. And I think that's one of the reasons why the public, I think that's one of the reasons why the public can sometimes be frustrated with the Security Council. Um, so there's always the need to push for internal change if we see that that's necessary. Are there any improvements that you see that the Security Council could try to reform itself from within over the course of the next few months of your term?
Yeah, I think we're already starting to take the steps of improving our transparency and public disclosure. I think the idea, and it's something that we've also had previous discussions about, is um, issuing formal statements at the conclusion of a vote on an applicant. And I think that's something we'll be looking at doing for any kind of vote we take, kind of issuing some kind of statement about the results of the vote and their impacts on the Security Council. Um, so I think those are directions that we are heading, working on transparency, working on better communication to the public. Um, and those are things that I see us accomplishing in this coming term.
Do you see any expansion in the role of the Security Council going forward?
Um, I honestly don't see any expansion in our role. We already have a very large role within the region, protecting the security of the region. Obviously, um, we had as a part of it, we do have a say in some form of the Security Council citizenship applications through the vice delegate, and the council also issues recommendations for potential citizen applicants. So there already is a very large role that the Security Council plays. Quite often, some of it is in the background and is not publicly seen, which is okay, in my opinion. There are some things that don't always, they're not showy, they're not flashy, they're just the hard work that needs to get done.
Speaking of deeply important questions to the North Pacific, Mad Jack would like to know how Ruby is doing, and also if a vote for you is a vote for Ruby.
Yes, a vote for me is a vote for Ruby. And she is currently sleeping on my feet right now, so I'm afraid to move them.
All right, let's get back to the less serious questions. Boromir is asking, how restrictive should BC privilege be?
I think we have BC privilege restricted as much as it needs to be. Currently, it's the delegate and 3 members of the Security Council are eligible for border control. I don't see that needing to be changed. Quite potentially, it is obviously up to the delegate on which of the top 3 security councils are granted border control. And there's also the mechanism for the regional assembly to grant border control to another member of the Security Council who's not in the top 3. So I think we have it restricted as it needs to be. Um, and then there's tools to expand upon that restriction.
Iluvatar asks, is it legitimate for citizens who are also citizens of other regions and or have World Assembly membership elsewhere to vote on recalling a member of our Security Council? Why or why not?
I believe it is legitimate because they're citizens of the North Pacific. As part of the North Pacific, we don't require that you have to have WA membership in the region to be a citizen, nor to have a vote to confirm or deny Security Council member, and we don't require that for recalling a member of the Security Council. So I don't see how WA membership would impact your vote or being a citizen of another region. We have cosmopolitans in the region. Uh, so I don't see how being a citizen or having WA in other regions makes it illegitimate to recall a Security Council member.
Do you specifically have any comments on the motion to recall Pasargad, which happened some years ago?
I have not actually read up on Hazardgad before, so I don't have any thoughts on that.
That's fine. So we've already discussed, or maybe I'm conflating different interviews at this point, to some extent, the actions that CCD took in trying to infiltrate our region and whatnot. My question to you is, how do you balance the need for sort of vigilance and scrutiny of citizenship applications with the need to remain open and welcoming to newcomers?
I mean, it's a very fine line to balance. It comes down to how much of a risk we think someone is going to be, what's their past history that we can find out based on the information provided to us. And really, the information we have provided to us at the time of an applicant is obviously their forum name and their nation name. And sometimes, if something little red flags kind of pop up, we try to dig even more and ask questions. Um, but at the same time, it's sometimes it is somewhat difficult to ascertain, okay, is this person really a noob, or are they someone who has experience in the region, in other regions, and would seek to do us harm? So it's a balancing act of managing the need to be open and inclusive to regions to join who are wanting to join, as well as remaining vigilant. And I think it's something that in TMP we've done a very good job at balancing those two viewpoints.
As you well know, as a vice delegate, there's always the possibility that there is some crisis in our democracy or some real life distraction that draws the delegate away from his office. Are you prepared to step up and act as delegate should that be needed?
Yes, I am prepared. I've been involved with the region for quite some time. I've held ministerial positions. Um, I've served one term and partial term working with the executive council on various aspects. So I've learned a lot about the different aspects of our region, the executive branch. Um, and the delicacy was something I was strongly considering running for this term. But in the end, I decided not to, due to just not having a clear vision on what I wanted to accomplish during the term as delegate. So that's when I decided I wanted to stay, wish to run for vice delegate again, and finished working out some of the things that I really wanted to accomplish as vice delegate.
If you were to take over the office of delegacy sometime in the next term, would you see it as your duty to maintain and continue to progress on that previous delegate's campaign goals, or would you have a different vision for the office?
Um, I think it would be a balancing act of um, maintaining what that delegate ran upon and was elected to. But obviously, if there are some other goals that I feel are important and that the region needs to consider, I would obviously get support from the cabinet and work on those goals.
All right, thank you so much for your time. It doesn't look like we have any more publicly submitted audience questions. If more do come up, feel free to post them on Artemis's campaign thread. I'm sure he'll be happy to answer them. Thank you so much for everyone who participated. And thank you, Artemis, for agreeing to speak on such short notice.
All right. Thank you all for asking questions, and thank you, Fiji, for putting this on.
Of course. Have a nice day, everyone. And make sure to stick around for our next town hall, which I believe will be Mall at in just about an hour.